camp of Pastor Apollo Quiboloy speaks up after he was placed on the wanted list by the FBI. COVID-19 vaccinations for kids aged 5 to 11 are set to begin today. Bongbong Marcos admits he's worried about the disqualification cases filed against him. Several bar examinees have been disqualified from this year's exams after violating the honor code. And the Filipinas are back in the country after qualifying for the World Cup. Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's everything you need to know as you jumpstart your day. I'm Charles Lejano. The camp of Pastor Apollo Quiboloy is questioning the timing of the FBI's release of the wanted poster of the Kingdom of Jesus Christ founder. They believe that the FBI did this to undermine President Duterte and to interfere with the upcoming elections. Camille Samonte has the details.
The US FBI publicly released its most wanted list in their website on Saturday, including Kingdom of Jesus Christ founder Pastor Apollo Quiboloy. This came after he and 2 other church members were indicted of sex trafficking and bulk cash smuggling in the US. Quiboloy's camp decried the move, questioning the timing of its release, as a federal grand jury indictment was made way back November 10 last year.
Bakit hinintay pa po hanggang ngayon kung kailan mag-uumpisa ang kampanyahan para sa national elections, kung kailan inilabas itong poster na to?
Topacio also pointed out that there is no need to ask for Quiboloy's whereabouts as he is not a fugitive in hiding.
At alam naman ng lahat na meron pang proseso sa extradition kung talagang kailangan siya ay pumunta sa Amerika.
With this, Topacio believes that this is a deliberate move to tarnish President Duterte's reputation, a known friend of the pastor. Recall that Quiboloy had recently endorsed the candidacy of Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and his running mate Mayor Sara Duterte.
Indirectly, it is undermining the candidacy of Sara Duterte, of Bongbong Marcos, or whichever candidate the United States does not want to win in this country.
Their camp, however, assured the public that if the U.S. asks for the pastor's extradition, they will not ask a special favor from Duterte.
We will just rely on the provisions of law, on our justice system.
The Justice Department, meanwhile, has yet to receive an extradition request. But Chief State Counsel George Orta II vowed to handle the case properly despite Quiboloy's connection to the president.
Kung ano man yung magiging dapat na gawin ng Department of Justice, gagawin namin. Susundin namin kung ano ang sinasabi sa ating konstitusyon, sa ating batas, at doon sa tamang proseso, regardless doon sa mga involved na personality. Kasi whether si Pastor Quiboloy man yan o hindi kilalang tao,
Orta also clarified that if Quiboloy and his associates get extradited, the U.S. court will still decide whether they are guilty or not from the accusations. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
In other news, COVID-19 vaccinations for kids aged 5 to 11 years old are set to begin today. Symbolic vaccinations will be held at the Philippine Children's Medical Center and the National Children's Hospital this morning. Health Secretary Francisco Duque III, vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr., along with other government officials, will lead the events. Meanwhile, the National Vaccination Operations Center says there are 8 vaccination sites for kids aged 5 to 11 years old in NCR. These include DOH hospitals, malls, schools, and even Manila Zoo. During the Laging Handa briefing on Saturday, NVOC co-lead Kesha Lorraine Rosario insisted that the COVID-19 vaccine formulation for 5 to 11 years old is safe. Rosario explained that the dosage for younger kids is smaller than that for vaccinees who are 12 years old and above.
Ang formulation naman ay very safe sa ating mga vaccine recipients, no? And then talagang ito yung suited for sa age group nila. Alam natin na hindi din sila exempted no sa pagkakaroon ng COVID-19 infection at this time po ito na po yung time na pwede din natin silang mabigyan ng additional ng protection against COVID-19.
Bongbong Marcos admits he is threatened by the disqualification case against him. Speaking with journalist Corina Sanchez, Marcos Jr. said while he is worrying about the result, he will not let this distract him from campaigning. And recall that Marcos Jr. failed to show up, even via Zoom, for the hearing of his disqualification case for allegedly having COVID-19 symptoms. But the next day it was revealed that he supposedly shot an ad with his running mate Sara Duterte.
Of course, I take everything seriously. I worry about everything, but I do not let it distract me from the campaign.
Meanwhile, Marcos Jr. again denies having troll farms. This despite studies showing him as the person who was most benefited from disinformation on social media.
Find me one. That's my challenge. Hanapan mo ako kahit isa.
For presidential aspirant and Vice President Leni Robredo, one of her goals is to ensure that no liar or corrupt person gets elected for president in the May elections. In her interview with journalist Corina Sanchez, Robredo said that she's not at all obsessed with Marcos Jr., but she added that anyone who makes a fool out of the Filipino people does not deserve to become the country's president. She also said that while the sins of the late dictator Ferdinand Marcos are not Marcos Jr.'s sins, the fact that he still benefits from the ill-gotten wealth makes him just as guilty.
Anyone na minimake niya yung mockery, yung paniniwala ng tao na handang magsinungaling para lang ma-achieve yung kanyang ambisyon saka yung kanyang greed, ay kailangan natin labanan. At hindi lang ako dapat yung lumalaban doon.
Meanwhile, Robredo also said that she deliberately chose a different color for her campaign to give a message of unity. And she added that the color doesn't matter, as she is the same determined politician underneath it all.
Dapat hindi tayo ginagamit yung kulay para maglagay ng divide. In fact, sa lahat kong pakikipag-usap sa supporters, yun yung aking hinihiling.
Tens of thousands of aspiring lawyers hurdled the two-day 2020 to 2021 bar exams, which concluded yesterday afternoon. After getting shelved for 2 years, the bar exams finally pushed through in 31 testing sites across the country. This was the first digital and localized bar exams that took into account the exigencies of the pandemic. But not everyone who finished this two-day ordeal will have a chance at becoming a lawyer, at least for this year. Associate Justice and Bar Examinations Chairperson Marvic Leonen announced that a number of those who were able to take the bar will be disqualified for this year's test. This after the OBC received reports that some examinees did not disclose their positive COVID-19 status, smuggled mobile phones into the exam rooms, and accessed social media during their lunch break. Leonen said that these infractions are all violations of the Honor Code, which merits their disqualification from this year's bar exams. The Philippine women's national football team bears the sacrifices that they had to endure before qualifying for the World Cup. The details in this report from Marty Bautista.
It's hope. For me, it's really hope that the future is bright for Philippine football, and not just for women's, young boys as well.
With a chance to make history, and she does. The Philippines.
Hope for Philippine football is what the Philippine women's national football team fought for when they qualified for the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup. The message of the Filipinas is simple, that women's football is worth investing in, and they hope their achievements have given faith for players to continue pursuing their dreams. The Filipinas arrived last weekend from the AFC Women's Asian Cup in India, where they qualified for the World Cup and entered their first semifinals in the tournament. National team veteran Ina Palacios emphasized that the feat didn't come easy, since they had to sacrifice time with family and work, even missing the Christmas and New Year's holidays just to train for the Cup. But for them, their sacrifice was worth it.
It's giving hope to the younger generation, is what we would always say. It's for them, it's to them, it's dedicated to them, it's for their future.
Centre back Hayley Long shared how their families had supported them throughout the competition.
Yeah, they stayed up. All of our families stayed up at any hour of the day to watch our games and to cheer us on and to give their comments about the games. It means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to the girls.
It's also the first time for some of the Filipinas like Malaya Cesar, Katrina Galu, and Kiara Fontanilla to visit the Philippines. Many of the players that make up the squad actually grew up abroad. But according to Kiara, this doesn't make them any less Filipino.
Being here in the hometown, I love how everyone is so welcoming, and being able to share it with my newfound family has been great. We've had a lot of fun, I think, and we're all Filipino. There's no such thing. We're not Filipino enough. We all have a heart of Philippine gold.
The journey doesn't end for the Philippine women's national football team after qualifying for the World Cup. In fact, this marks the beginning of a new story. The Filipinas are set to compete in another tournament, including the Southeast Asian Games, which will happen in May.
We have 3 fixed competition for our women team this year. The first will be the 31st Southeast Asian Games in Hanoi, Vietnam, which will be held on May 12 this year. And of course, the team has to prepare for that. And the next one will be the ASEAN Football Federation Women Championship, which will be held in the Philippines.
For News 5, Marty Bautista. We are One News.
And that's how the day is shaping up to be. Join us again later at 9 a.m. as we monitor the day's biggest stories from sunrise to sundown. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.